If you stopped working tomorrow, completely stopped, how long would your money actually protect you? For most men, the answer isn't comforting. A few weeks, maybe a couple of months if they're disciplined. For the truly wealthy, though, the answer stretches into decades, and for a rare few, it extends into eternity. Niccolo Machiavelli once noted that fortune does not smile upon the strongest soldier, but on the strategist who secures his position before the battle even begins. That idea is just as relevant in money as it is in politics. Lasting wealth is never built on the back of constant labor. It's built on structures, on ownership, on systems that continue to reward you whether you are present or not. The rich don't just think about the next paycheck. They think about permanence, about leverage, about setting up fortresses of income that require no constant defense. Imagine creating something once and being paid for it not just for years, but for decades. That's not fantasy. That is the hidden method of rulers, merchants, and dynasties who understood the deepest truth of power. Build what cannot easily be taken, and you will be paid long after you've laid down your sword. One of the purest forms of this permanence emerges in patents. Renaissance Venice is a perfect example. The city flourished not merely because of its trade routes, but because it granted inventors the exclusive right to profit from their creations. Those rights weren't just legal contracts, they were magnets that held brilliant minds in place. Instead of fleeing to rival states, innovators poured their energy into Venice, knowing they would reap the rewards of their genius. Fast forward to our own age. James Dyson didn't just design a better vacuum. He spent years grinding through over 5,000 prototypes, pushing past failure after failure, until he built a machine that would not lose suction. But the true genius wasn't the machine itself. It was the wall of patents surrounding it, a fortress of legal ownership. Competitors couldn't simply copy his work. They had to pay him tribute. Dyson turned engineering into empire, not because he labored forever, but because he captured an idea and locked it behind iron gates. Machiavelli would have smiled at this lesson. You don't have to fight every battle with your own blade if you own the design of the weapon itself. And inventions are only one path. Sometimes, the fortress hides not in machines, but in melodies. Consider Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. Recorded back in 1994, it has become an annual ritual. Every December, it returns like clockwork. Every time it plays, in stores, on the radio, in films, royalties pour back to her. The song is nearly 30 years old, yet it behaves like an immortal servant, generating tribute year after year. This is cultural permanence. Machiavelli would have recognized it as mastery of timing. Create once, embed it in the rhythm of society, and let repetition become your servant. In a world obsessed with novelty, true wealth often comes from embedding yourself in tradition, in rituals that never die. But what about those who cannot design a revolutionary machine or write a timeless song? That's where the modern world offers an opportunity so radical that even Renaissance princes couldn't have imagined it. Digital products, a PDF, a course, a template, a toolkit, something created once, yet capable of infinite distribution at zero marginal cost. There is no factory, no shipping, no warehouse. The product replicates itself endlessly in the digital ether. Russell Brunson demonstrated this with a simple downloadable book. No publisher, no printing press, no distribution network. Yet the revenue continues more than a decade later. The internet abolished the gatekeepers. It turned ideas themselves into assets. It allowed the individual to do what once required kingdoms: project influence, scale infinitely, and collect tribute across borders. And here's the psychological trap most miss. We're conditioned, through years of schooling and labor, to equate effort with reward, to believe that payment must follow hours spent. This is the bias of linear thinking, the inability to perceive exponential payoff. Neuroscience calls it the present bias, the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue long-term gains. The wealthy subvert this bias. They think not of hours, but of permanence. They trade the thrill of quick cash for the fortress of enduring income. Even a few words can become such a fortress. Michael Buffer proved this when he trademarked a phrase that electrifies stadiums worldwide. Let's get ready to rumble. 5 words, legally protected, transformed into over $400 million. He doesn't own factories, ships, or armies. He owns language. He owns the right to utter a phrase in a particular way, and others must pay him to use it. To Machiavelli, this would have been a revelation of reputation, intangible, yet more enduring than armies. A phrase, once branded and defended, can command tribute across generations. Soldiers age, merchant ships sink, but a trademark, like a banner flying high above the battlefield, can outlast them all. The principle reaches its zenith in licensing. Consider George Lucas. He didn't just make movies, he built a universe. While the Star Wars films earned billions, the licensing of toys, merchandise, and games multiplied that into an empire. Lucas himself didn't mold the toys or stitch the costumes. Others did, but they paid him for the privilege of doing so. This is Machiavelli's lesson in its purest form. It is better to be the lord of the realm than the soldier in the fields. The true master doesn't labor endlessly. He collects tribute. Most men still believe wealth is built by constant struggle. They mistake motion for progress. Machiavelli would laugh. Labor enslaves the ruler to his own creation. Systems liberate him. Ray Kroc understood this better than most. He didn't invent the cheeseburger, but he did invent a system, McDonald's franchising. He built a machine that others could operate in his name. Entrepreneurs across the globe bought the right to replicate his model, paying fees for the privilege. Kroc didn't run restaurants. He ran an empire of operators. But his true genius went deeper. He understood that the real gold wasn't in the burgers. It was in the land beneath them. McDonald's became not just a fast food chain, but one of the largest real estate empires in the world. Every franchisee paid not just for branding, but for the ground they stood on. Ground owned by Kroc's company. This is permanence incarnate. While others sweated in kitchens, the throne collected rent forever. Land has always been the silent general of empires. The Medicis of Florence rose not merely through banking, but through their control of property, anchoring their dynasty across generations. The principle hasn't changed. Ownership of land guarantees tribute as long as men must stand upon it. The patterns are there, if you're willing to look. Inventions, songs, digital products, words, worlds, systems, land. They are all fortresses of ownership, each a wall of permanence against the erosion of time. And this is where most fail. They believe wealth must be constantly fought for. But the rich don't fight. They position. They construct. They let the fortress collect tribute while they rest. The question you must ask yourself isn't, how hard can I work? But what fortress am I building? Consider another fortress of permanence. Dividend stocks. Warren Buffett's fortune doesn't come from trading in and out of the market like a gambler chasing adrenaline. His wealth is the quiet kind, the patient kind. He bought shares in Coca-Cola decades ago. He hasn't sold them. He doesn't need to. Each year, those shares pay him hundreds of millions in dividends. He doesn't lift a finger. Factories run. Workers toil. Distributors ship. Customers drink. And like tribute flowing from distant provinces, the profits arrive in Omaha. Machiavelli warned that rulers must never depend solely on the arms of others. Yet here lies the paradox. Buffett depends on others precisely because he doesn't control them. His ownership is his weapon. The soldiers, in this case, are corporate managers and global supply chains. He never commands them directly, yet they labor for him perpetually. This is the psychology of leverage. Most people are trained to see wealth as a function of their own effort. Neuroscience shows us why. Our brains evolved to track visible effort and immediate return. A hunter sees the rabbit he catches. A farmer sees the crops he plants. But modern wealth operates on invisible systems. We struggle to comprehend money that arrives from actions we did not take. The wealthy, however, train themselves to live in this invisible space. They master the cognitive leap from effort-based reward to ownership-based reward. If dividends are the calm, steady heartbeat of wealth, then private equity is the thunderous strike of fortune. Think of Peter Thiel's $500,000 stake in a fledgling company called Facebook. That small gamble became billions. Or Naval Ravikant backing Twitter and Uber before most of the world even cared. Even Shaquille O'Neal, once a titan on the basketball court, made far more from backing businesses and franchises than he ever did scoring points. Machiavelli observed that fortune is a woman, and if you wish to master her, you must treat her boldly. Private equity embodies this principle. It's not cautious, it's audacious. It requires the boldness to seize opportunities before they are obvious. The reward is not linear, it is explosive. One correct decision, placed early, can echo for a lifetime. Yet boldness must be balanced with foresight. Cognitive biases, like survivorship bias, blind us to the thousands of failed startups we never hear about. We glorify Facebook and Uber, but forget the countless ventures that vanished into obscurity. The wealthy don't gamble blindly. They play the odds with discipline. They calculate risks with a philosopher's detachment, knowing that one decisive strike can outweigh a dozen small failures. But let us turn to a weapon more subtle, more ancient, the network. Machiavelli wrote that alliances are the lifeblood of rulers. No prince stands alone. In commerce, this truth reappears in the form of referrals and connections. You might introduce two parties, a creator and an investor, a buyer and a seller, and take a portion simply for being the bridge. You're neither producer nor builder. You are the gatekeeper, and gatekeepers always get paid. History shows us this pattern over and over. Venetian brokers became rich, not by sailing to India themselves, but by connecting spice merchants to European buyers. They never risked storms or pirates, yet they extracted tribute from every deal. In our age, the logic is the same. Whether you connect consultants, investors, or creators, the one who holds the keys to opportunity commands a toll. And this psychologically is where most people fail. They underestimate the value of their network because of the availability heuristic. We tend to value only what we can measure directly. A paycheck feels real. A relationship feels intangible. But to the wealthy, networks are capital. Social psychology confirms this. Humans are wired for reciprocity. When you bridge opportunity, those you help feel compelled to reward you. Over time, this turns into streams of value, invisible to the untrained eye. Look carefully, and you'll see the same pattern. The rich escape the trap of labor by shifting roles. They stop being soldiers in the field and become strategists in the castle. They create fortresses, patents, royalties, systems, brands, land, dividends, equity, referrals that generate tribute whether they are present or not. Machiavelli's core lesson comes alive here. He said, The wise man prepares defenses long before the enemy arrives. In wealth, the enemy isn't an army. It is time, sickness, and mortality. If your wealth depends only on your labor, then the day your strength fails, your kingdom collapses. But if your wealth depends on fortresses, assets that endure, then time itself becomes your ally. Each year strengthens your position instead of weakening it. The pattern is ruthless but simple. Dyson's patents, walls that keep imitators at bay. Mariah Carey's royalties, rituals that return like clockwork. Brunson's digital book, infinite replication without cost. Buffer's trademark, words as weapons. Lucas's licensing, worlds turned into tribute streams. Ray Kroc's franchising and real estate, systems that multiply themselves. Buffett's dividends, patience transmuted into perpetual income. Thiel's private equity, bold strikes that create dynasties. Networks and referrals, alliances that turn relationships into revenue. Each is a fortress stone. Together, they form walls no storm can breach, and here lies the psychological pivot you must make. Most people scatter their energy. One job, one hustle, one temporary project after another. The rich anchor themselves to permanence. They choose fewer moves, but each one is designed to last. This isn't just economics. It is philosophy. It is the stoic discipline of thinking beyond the present. It is the psychological strength to resist the pull of immediate gratification and instead build what endures. And so you must ask yourself, are you building fortresses, or are you swinging your sword every day, hoping not to tire? Let us go deeper. Think of royalties again, not just as money, but as a kind of immortality. When an artist records a song, a book, or a film and secures ownership of it, they extend themselves into time. Shakespeare, had he lived in an age of royalties, would have become wealthier than kings. Every performance of his plays for centuries would have returned tribute. Instead, his genius enriched theaters, while he himself remained mortal, bound by time. Modern creators, by contrast, can live Machiavelli's dream. They can bind their work to rights that outlive them. This is the essence of legacy income, what rulers sought in dynasties, and what artists now achieve through law. In the digital age, this principle is magnified. A single course, ebook, or toolkit created once becomes a modern echo of the Greek logos. The ancients believed logos, the spoken word, could reverberate across centuries. Today, the digital file does the same. It is a word turned into a system, a signal traveling across time zones and years, delivering wealth long after the creator has moved on. But here lies the great danger: distraction. Most men consume endlessly, yet create little. They march under the flags of others. Machiavelli would warn that those who fail to raise their own banner will forever fight under someone else's. Franchising, real estate, and systems magnify this warning. Look again at Ray Kroc. He didn't attempt to run every restaurant. He created a replicable formula. By planting loyal governors, franchisees, he multiplied himself. Each local operator believed they were kings of their own territory, yet they all paid tribute upward. This is textbook Machiavelli. Conquer provinces, install governors, and let them maintain the land while you sit at the center of power. Do you see the divide? One man flips burgers. Another man owns the ground beneath him. One man works. Another man collects. Investing capital is yet another level of this strategy. Buffett's dividends require no movement at all. Peter Thiel's fortune didn't come from writing code. It came from the foresight to recognize where power was about to emerge. This is the general placing troops on a hill long before the enemy arrives. When battle begins, victory is already assured. All of these examples, patents, royalties, systems, real estate, investments, share one unifying theme: the redirection of effort. Other people labor, other people innovate, other people manage. Yet the true master, the one who owns the fortress, receives the reward. This is why ownership is superior to force. You can command obedience with laws or weapons, but these require constant vigilance. Ownership, by contrast, demands no such effort. A soldier must be fed every day. A tenant pays rent without being reminded. If you understand this, you stop mistaking financial tools for mere transactions. A patent is not a legal paper. It is a fortress wall. A royalty is not a payment. It is tribute from conquered land. A franchise is not a chain. It is a kingdom replicated. Each is a strategy of sovereignty. And this is where the shift must happen inside you. Wealth is not random, nor is it reserved for the lucky. It is built by those who think like rulers, not workers, by those who design their lives as empires, not jobs. Jeff Bezos built Amazon not to sell books forever, but to create a machine that extracts tribute from every purchase made on its platform. Jay-Z didn't rely only on songs. He claimed ownership, masters, streaming platforms, liquor brands. The Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Agnellis, all endured because they built fortresses. Finance, industry, land. They designed wealth that survived their mortality. This is why dynasties persist while workers vanish nameless. Now the question turns to you. Are you building a fortress or merely surviving day to day? The path is open, but it demands discipline. Start with one stone. Write a book. Build a product, buy a rental property, acquire shares, or simply connect people and claim a bridge toll. What matters is not size at the beginning, but permanence of the design. Machiavelli's wisdom applies here. The prince who waits until the enemy is at the gates is already lost. In your life, the enemy is time, illness, and the day your labor falters. If your wealth collapses when you stop working, you have no fortress. If your wealth continues to flow when you are absent, then you have secured sovereignty. This is the real distinction between a worker and a sovereign. One trades hours for coins. The other builds a domain where coins arrive unbidden. The most profound realization is that the game is not about how much harder you can work. It is about whether you control the board itself. So, reflect. Will you be the soldier sweating in the field, or the ruler commanding from the fortress? Do not mistake this for abstract philosophy. This is a manual for survival in a world where time is the ultimate enemy. Take the knowledge, act on it, and begin construction. If you avoid the common error, trading every hour for wages, and instead build assets that reward you in absence, you will rise above the crowd by default. Machiavelli advised rulers to build defenses long before battle. So too must you build systems long before your strength wanes. The fortresses await: patents, royalties, digital products, trademarks, licensing, franchising, real estate, dividends, equity, referrals. You need not build them all, but you must build at least one. For the wealthy do not endure because they are extraordinary. They endure because they refuse to be foolish. The moment of decision is now. Either you drift with the crowd, laboring until you collapse, or you begin to construct your fortress, brick by brick, asset by asset, until wealth arrives without your command. If you've understood the lessons revealed here, then you've already taken the first step, awareness. The second step is building. Subscribe, stay vigilant, and choose sovereignty over survival. For the battle is not against others, It is against time itself, and only fortresses endure.